Go
I'm gonna
behind the
start recording.
scenes.
I didn't worry about posting the last video because we can go back and just, it was kind of a long conversation about a basic idea. So we can just go back to that idea anytime about how data is structured. But I will post this one today because what we're doing now is going to generalize, right? Once you have information posted as metadata to the blockchain, then we want to be able to do some things with it. So that's really what we're going to focus on here. So I have a few things open. I've got my development environment for the ABCD website here. And I'm just getting my chat window open. There we go. And then I've got the ABCD website project open in VS Code here. And then I've got on GitLab, this is the Gimbal Labs repository. And this is the page here. And I'll just to remind you, this is the page in our playground where we can look at metadata with GraphQL, right? So again, we've played with this part, how if I type 100, we see the fund 2 winners. But what was that key we used the other day? 2021. It was yesterday's date, 04/29.
29. Yeah.
Right? And here's that metadata, right? And it's so far, it's the only metadata posted to that key. So what we want to do is grab this information and present it in an attractive way here on the ABCD website, right? The way we're going to do that is with a GraphQL query. So here I am, the URL is graphql-api.mainnet.dandelion.link. I'll put this in the chat too, so you can both play with this. And this is one of the really cool things about GraphQL is that it provides for us this playground. Here's Faye. It provides for us this playground where we can see what a query is going to deliver. Just pausing for a moment while we get Faye here. And here, I'm going to turn off my camera. Hey, Faye, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. We're so excited to hear about the World Mobile, and hopefully we are months away from better connectivity for the ABCD team. We are looking at a metadata query via GraphQL right now. So, right, if I query the key 100, I see this catalyst data that we've been looking at. But if I query a different key, like 2021-0429, I will get a different response. And here it is. Okay. So we looked at this for the first time, I think last week. I showed you that kind of long query that we were using here. And I know this is really small, but just as a reminder, right? Here, let me zoom in on this a little bit. Right, we said, all right, if key 100 is entered, we're going to take the data and then go into the array of transactions and then go into the array of metadata, value, additional information, et cetera, right? So how do we figure out what we are asking for right here? Well, we look at the response here, and I can see it, data.transactions, which is an array, so I'll need an index there, .metadata, which is also an array, so I'll need an index, .key, value dot title, etc. And so as long as we follow the format that we set for ourselves, we should be able to render any and all of this information on the ABCD site. So let's do this now. And this is where I need your help. Where on this site should I put this information in the first place?
Maybe the about page, I don't know, or the home page.
What about a dedicated page for that?
It could fit down here at the bottom. Yeah. We could make a little celebrated, more about. We could put it here. I'm open to anything. I mean, we could put it in more than one spot too, just because we're playing around, right? What do you think?
Yeah.
Should we start? How about this? What if we start by doing it here at the bottom of the about page? And then Faye and Buki, you can take what I'm showing you today and you can choose to put this elsewhere on the site. And that'll be a good way for you to practice. So I'm gonna open up the about page. And I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom. So this is where we're gonna put this information. All right, so let's make just a paragraph tag here. And this is where we're gonna put some metadata, right? So just that placeholder, just to make sure, yeah, here's some metadata, okay. Let's make a little sub div here. And oops, I did that wrong. Let's give this a W50. No, W1/2. And let's give it a BG Blue 400 and an MX Auto. I'm just giving myself a little box to put this work into. Save that. Yeah, okay, so we have this little box. We can change the styling later, but this is where we're going to be working today. Okay. So now let me go back to the Gimbal Labs repository just to look at how we did this. So first of all, we are using a package called Apollo Client to make this call in the first place. So this is actually, we're going to be able to just copy and paste this directly. Then we're going to make a query. And we're actually going to be able to copy and paste this directly, except that we're not even worried about the key being a variable for now. All we really need to do is just hard code the number 2021-0429 right here, because that's the only key we're trying to get. So that's a little bit easier. And then that's going to return, that's going to refer to GQL, right? So where do we see GQL? All right, we see the query right here, use query. And this was passing a variable, but we're not going to have to do that part. And then we're basically just going to use what we get. We're basically going to grab that data.transactions, which is what we see here, data.transactions. dot transactions, and we're going to use what's inside. So really, what I really need to make this work is this part, not all of this, just part of it, and then a simpler version of this where we go directly directly to the data that's returned by the query. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, I'm just making sure. Yeah. All right. Well, there's going to be a few things. We'll do this one step at a time. And sorry, the reason I'm pausing right now, it makes it. We should probably make this a separate component, actually. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here about the best way to approach this, but I think this about page is already pretty long. So I think it might be more effective to make this a separate component that we just then place here. And that's going to give us a shorter file where we can really focus on just this metadata query. So here's what I'm going to do. Over here in components, layout, cards, footer, let's make a component folder called queries. Okay. And is that really the most effective name? Let's call it metadata. And let's make a file in there called, we'll just call this component about abcd.js. Do I no longer? Okay. And this is going to return about ABCD. Let me just take this right here. I'm going to cut it and put it here. This is going to be what is returned. And then just to make sure this is working, that part in next, I can save this, export default about ABCD, right? So I should be able to place, put this here, about ABCD, and VS Code just already imported this for me, okay, because of the way I typed it down below and pressed enter. So good, that import is taken care of now. And now we should be able to save this and see what changed. I didn't, okay, I haven't imported paragraph into about ABCD yet, right? So that's, paragraph is imported up here from components/type. Sorry, let me make this bigger. I realize this probably isn't big enough. So we just need to import that type. Import paragraph from where? Now that works. There's some metadata. I can also, of course, add title heading 1 right here. Did I call it title heading? Heading, sorry. just heading. And that might not be exactly what I want, right? But let's just say a world right there, just to make sure it's working. And sure enough, okay. So our component is working. That's great. I'm already realizing that I might want some padding here. Let's just put a P10 there. So there's some room. And let's put a margin at the bottom so that it doesn't get covered up by the footer. Okay, so now we've got a space to do our work. Hopefully that was a helpful little review of how to set this space up. Now let's get down to it. So now here in this component, I can focus on calling the external data via the GraphQL API. And I can focus on using Apollo client to consume that data. Now, of course, we're going to need, oh, we got it already. Good. We installed this last time, Apollo client. That's good. So I don't have to npm install anything. It's already here. And that means I should be able to use it like we see here. So, you know, as I start hacking away at this, I'm just going to grab this whole line. Maybe we'll need all of this, maybe we won't. At the end, if we haven't used all of these 5 different imports, we'll just delete the ones we're not using. So here, let's import all of that from @Apollo client. Also in Next, I don't need to import React, but we are going to use state, which is a hook. So let's put that here. Link, we're good. Boom, we're good there. Yep. All right, so that's going to be everything that we might need technically to get this job done. So what happens next? Well, first of all, we need to call on the endpoint. So like I said earlier, we can straight up copy and paste the client reference here. So let's just put that here. Okay, that's easy. Now we've used in memory cache, we've used Apollo client. Okay. And always, right, I'm showing you a quick overview of how to do this. I certainly recommend looking up the documentation so you can learn more about all of these things. So, right, the documentation here is really good. You can go through all of this. You can read the API. For example, if you want to learn how in-memory cache works, you can read about it here. All right, now we want to write our query. And so once again, I'm just going to copy this part. But I think we're going to want to call this something else because we're not getting metadata by key. We're just getting the exact metadata. So I could just leave this and say get metadata. And that's probably plenty. If I wanted to, I could be more specific. I could say get metadata at, right, and give it that name so it's clearer to me in the future what this query is doing. So I'm going to leave it like that. You can call this whatever you want. I could just call it X if I wanted to. But this is a nice, helpful name for our query. And in case you're wondering, you can write several of these, and each one is going to be a GQL, right? A GraphQL query, okay? So basically, and this you'll see in the documentation as well for Apollo Client, how GQL works. But this basically allows you to set up names, right, references to any number of queries, and then to use those throughout your app. We don't need metadata to be a variable here. We want it to be directly
Mr. James,
yeah,
I have a question.
yes.
So I understand the step would be to call on the endpoint using the URL. But now that querying the text transaction, the query metadata, is it already built in the GraphQL docs, or we have to use some logic in writing it? That's what I don't understand.
Okay, yeah, I think I understand the question. What line are you looking at when you say that?
Line 11 to 20, like the query, is it a template, or what's the logic behind that template? That's what I don't understand.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Yes, it is more or less a template. Okay. And it's going to follow this structure right here. Right. There's actually other queries you can make to the Cardano GraphQL endpoint. This is the MetaTX one. But for example, there's other queries you can make to look at native assets, okay? And let's look at some of those other queries in upcoming meetings, okay? Let's get our feet wet with this one and then expand our knowledge to other GraphQL queries. Because you're exactly right. I think seeing the different ways this works is going to be really helpful, okay? For now,
Okay,
yeah.
Mr. James.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have another question.
Go ahead.
The dollar sign, I noticed that it kind of specifies that we are querying a variable, right?
Exactly.
And now you mentioned that we don't need that. So if we're not querying a variable, what are we querying then?
Aha, good. So right here, this variable is being passed as a parameter to the MetaTX query. We can just send it no parameters like this, kind of like we're seeing here, okay? And then we can set the key equal to just the number we want. Now, I got to check a few things, actually. I forget at the moment if we need these parentheses. And I forget at the moment if this needs to be in quotes. Yeah, it looks like it's in quotes there. So I think this needs to be in quotes. And it looks like there's no parentheses here. So let's, for now, get rid of those, right? And now what's written here matches this perfectly. And we know this is working because it delivered us data. But if something goes wrong as we try to use this data, we'll come back and we'll just play with the syntax here until we get it to work. Let's see. So what's next? After we write all this is just a place.
James.
Hey, Buki, you're
Hello?
breaking up. Hey, I could hear your voice, but it was a little bit
I
short.
can hear you now.
Oh, good, good. Hi, try again.
Yeah, you can keep going. I can hear you
Oh,
now.
that's nice. Good. Right. So this is just a variable, and really think about the syntax here. All this is doing is it's allowing us to type get metadata by key instead of typing the whole query over and over again, right? So we're using that as a reference to the query we want to make. Okay.
Oh. So that means if we have to call it some other time, instead of replicating the exact codes, just call it get metadata by key, and it does the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that what it means? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, this name can be whatever we want, right? So we changed the name here to get metadata at, right? And then the number. But this could be anything, and it's just how we're going to reference this query later on in our logic.
Okay.
So let's use that now. Okay, well, we're not passing it any parameters, but we are probably going to want this metadata tx function. And how is this used? Well, here, right, we call on this function here to render the data we want. Also, notice that we need to wrap the entire thing in Apollo provider. Okay, that's how we tell our component that there's going to be some changing information that's pulled from outside. Now I'm realizing actually we only used the use state hook to make it possible for the user of the web page to enter whatever key they wanted to, and that variable was stored as tx meta, right? There was the form, right? And whatever the user types into the form, it sets the value of tx meta, and then that tells metadata key what to pull. So we actually don't need this part. So going back into here, we're not going to need the use state hook. We are going to need to wrap this whole thing in an Apollo provider. Oh, shortcut didn't work there. Oh, well. There we go. So we'll take all of this that we already had, and we will put it inside of that Apollo provider. Let's just make sure this is still working and we're not getting any errors. Let's just save that. Let's head back over to our project. All right, it's not working. Apollo provider was not passed a client instance. That makes total sense because look, when I create an Apollo provider, I have to tell it what client we're using. So client is a parameter, and this client right here is just the variable name for the client we set up here. Okay. So here I have to use the word client, and then here I can use any name I want to, but it's convenient to use the same thing, right? So here just has to match whatever I chose to write here. So let's grab that, copy that, put it here, save, and let's see if this works. Okay, good. Now the page is rendering and it says, can you see me? Okay, good. So our changes have now rendered. So far, so good. Now, the only thing we're not using yet of all of the Apollo client tools we imported is use query. So let's do that. We've created the query. How do we use it? That is what's going on here. Okay. So let's see. We can write a helper function. And we can call it metadata tx, just like we used meta tx. I can really call this whatever I want. And this function is actually not going to take any parameters, right? I don't need to write anything here because I'm not passing it any particular key anymore. But I'm still going to use this for the most part, just not all of it. So I no longer need the variables. Okay. And let's just, here is where I need to go back to the documentation, but I just feel like hacking right now. Let's just see if this is okay. I can't remember if use query requires 2 parameters or not. Yeah, it's worth it to check that. Let's go look. So use query. Okay, this is a hook. Query. Use query. Yeah, so it requires the query. I don't know if you need to have anything else. If for example, you're not passing variables. Right, you can pass variables. Options, right? Those are called options. So let's just see if I can only pass it a query, and let's just see if it works when I do that. And if it doesn't, we'll come back to the docs. Okay. So yeah, we're making this query. And then what? We need to return something. Now, while it's loading, we want to pass that it's loading. And if there's an error, we want to pass that there's an error. So this stuff right here, this is going to be boilerplate. I can copy that, right? So basically, Apollo takes care of all of these different states. Whenever I call outside data, and if it's waiting, for example, for the endpoint to respond, then Apollo client will know, okay, yeah, let's keep it in a loading state. If something doesn't work, it'll return the error state. That's great. Okay. Otherwise, we want to return the data. Okay. And we can go down here, right? For every other key, it says return this. Well, let's just get that working first. Okay, it says for every other key, let's just return, sure, the data. And I could use the word else here, but basically, remember the way that this function is going to work is that if this happens, as soon as it returns something, the function stops doing anything. Once it returns, there's nothing else to do. So if it's loading, sure, it returns that. If it's error, sure, it returns that. If I just put a return at the bottom, this basically means otherwise, just return this other thing. Okay. And we can actually test this. Let's do this. Let's use heading 1. This is working. Okay. And down here, instead of this text, let's put metadata tx like this. All right, let's see if that works. Loading. All right, did you see that? All right, when I first load the page, and well, now that it's loaded, right? So it's kind of cached the data here. But if you notice down the screen, it said loading for a moment, and now it says this is working. So I'm pretty confident that so far, everything we've done here is passing good information here because we didn't get the error. We saw the loading for a moment, and then we got this is working. So basically now we should be able to, let's try this, put in a paragraph the results of our query. What does that look like? Well, you can see data.transactions, right? Now there's only one here in this array, so we don't even really need to map anything because we know there's only this one transaction in this array here. So let's just do this first, okay? Before we start using this in any particular way, let's go ahead and do the simplest version possible. Let's just do a JSON.stringify of the data. Let's see if that works, okay? So here, I'm gonna write JSON.stringify. Stringify what? The data that were returned here. I just want to see if this works, right? I'm just going one step at a time. Go back over here. Loading. Loading. Still loading. Maybe it's not working. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it loaded for a while. I'm not sure why it hung up there, but now as you can see, we've got this raw JSON data rendering to the page. Cool. That means this is working. And now we can take just the parts we want. So instead of just stringifying the entire JSON object, let's just take what we want from the data. Data dot what? Data dot transactions. Remember that transactions is an array. Since there's only one object in the array, we can just say transactions at index 0. From there, what do we want? We want the metadata inside the object at index 0. So transactions 0 dot metadata. Metadata also returns an array with how many objects? 1. So once again, we want to take the metadata at index 0 dot. What do we want from there? Any of this stuff. How about the value dot title? Let's try it. Dot value dot title. If this works, we should see the words introducing Africa's Blockchain Center for Developers on the page. I'm going to save this. And let's see if that's what we see. Loading. This happened last time. I had to press the refresh button. Let's see if this works. Refresh, loading, there it is. And there you go. And it's so funny when you get this to work, right? Because it feels kind of insignificant. You're like, well, I could have just typed these words on the page, right? But under the hood is where the real work is happening. And we're just doing this to learn together. But there you go. This information is being served up from the blockchain. Let's make that
So
bigger.
cool.
Really interesting, right?
Yeah. Mr. James, I noticed something though.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was able to like get some notes down, and I remember you said, was it the use query comes with some, sorry, the function metadata tx comes with an inbuilt function loading error and data. that it's so cool that it takes care of the loading and the error for us. But I noticed in the structure of the metadata, we had the overall data, which was, how will I place it? The key to the overall metadata we are trying to fetch was termed data. And now that metadata TX function has data. Is it just a coincidence that you must name the data you are to fetch data, or it's just a coincidence? I
Very
don't know if
good.
you get my
No,
question.
yeah, I had the same question when I was learning this. So this query right here returns this entire object, and this object has a key called data inside of it. And that's not up to us. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I actually have to check this. And if anybody else happens to watch this video and I say this wrong, just comment about it. But yeah, this right here is built in to the response to this query. And I believe that's part of Cardano doing that. Okay, but I got to check on who decided that this is the word. I'm not exactly sure. Is this a GraphQL thing or a Cardano thing? Okay. And then inside of that data, then this is definitely a Cardano thing. There's an object called transactions, or sorry, an array of transactions at that data. And those transactions, among other things, have metadata. Okay. And that's what we're asking for right here. Okay, there's actually other information, right? We queried for transactions because that's one thing you can query for at this GraphQL endpoint. And when you're querying a transaction, there's a bunch of different stuff you can query. Among them is metadata. Okay. But yeah, I got to
Okay,
check.
Mr. James.
I hope that makes sense. I think you and I are right here together. Like, I think we both kind of understand it, but we both have the same question. Where does this word come from?
Yeah, like I don't remember us placing that data key in the JSON file we created yesterday.
Right.
And I don't think we did that. And I'm seeing data as an inbuilt function for the metadata FX. And I'm seeing data here. So I'm just thinking, does it come in built, or do we have to specify it anytime you write a JSON file that is to be rendered to the blockchain? That
Good.
was what
Okay.
I was just
Yeah,
wondering.
we definitely don't write this. Yeah, this doesn't come from us. And here, let me,
Okay.
do I still have that transaction we wrote right here? I think this is it. Hold on. Open just with text edit. Yeah, here, okay, right. Here's what we wrote to get this information up. And obviously that's too small. Give me a second here. Right, so we just made an object and we chose a key and then we put this stuff inside of it, right? We didn't write the word data and we didn't write the word transaction. Transaction and metadata, those are built into Cardano. This is either coming from Cardano or from GraphQL, and I got to ask somebody who knows this.
Okay. And
Okay.
so it just goes with the structure of the query metadata effect. Is it TX? Makes so much sense. Thank you.
You bet. Oh, I'm so glad we're learning this together. Okay, so it's working. And now we've done the hard part. So now we get to do the fun part, right? Now we get to say, all right, from this metadata that we have, well, here we wrote it, we posted it, it's permanent on the blockchain. And now we can pull whichever parts we want and we can format them however we want. So let's say, right, maybe we have a heading like that. Maybe we want a heading 2 to look like this. Oops. This has to be in React. Remember, I have to have a wrapper for anything. I can't have like multiple top level tags. That's why it gave me that error. But let's just copy this. We're going to do the same exact thing, but in addition to the title, maybe we also want the slogan. So we'll add slogan here. Let me save that. Let's go refresh the page. It's loading. Again, I got to figure out why it's making me refresh, but I'm not too worried about. Whoop. Oh, I never brought heading 2 in. Of course. To save that. Reload. And there we go. We've got a heading. We've got a slogan. I'm going to leave this to you, Faye and Buki, to style this however you want. Okay, I'm just going to put the information here and then leave the rest, leave the fun part to you. Paragraph. Well, here's an interesting one. This is an array. But remember we saw the other day how it just kind of took care of making this a single paragraph for us. I'm actually not sure exactly how that part works, but I'm sure curious. Let's see what happens if we simply do this inside of paragraph tags. I'm not sure if this is going to show a nice coherent paragraph or if it's going to make us do a little more to deal with the array. Let's find out. Refresh. Yeah, no problem. Okay. There's actually the one problem, I guess, is that there's not a space after that period. So maybe, so actually this is funny, right? We do. Look, okay, I gave us a challenge here because basically there's no space after the word opportunities and before the word for right here. So if you look closely here, you can see there's no space in between the word opportunities and for. So that's my mistake. I should have included spaces there when we put this array up. But this is now a problem that we can solve by maybe what we need to do is just map this message. Let's think about this for a second. Yeah, there's a few ways we could deal with this. And you can see. So let's do this. Let's do message dot map. Similar to what we did here, right? And we're just going to map each element to live inside of a paragraph. Let's try that. I always just have to double check to make sure I'm getting my parentheses right. So map works like this, and we're going to take each element in the array and we're going to map it to a paragraph. Whoops. We're just going to put each of those lines inside its own paragraph. So what this is going to do now, let's see if this works. You see, so now each line is on separate lines. There's ways that we can make this appear coherent, but I'm going to leave it like this for now, and you can play with that if you want to. And then let's follow the same logic here. And let's do it one more time, but this time with the founding devs. So let's go founding devs, map, and we could make each of those a heading 2 or whatever we want. We could make these list items if we wanted to. Right, so one other choice I could do is I could wrap this whole thing in a UL, and instead of heading 2, I could use LI here. All right, but I'll let you go do that later if you want to. Maybe I do want to have the words. Oh, not heading 12. Maybe I do want to have the words founding devs right here. And then below that, then we've got each of your names. Let's see if this works. All the information that we posted in metadata is now rendered here on the page. I didn't make it look good yet because my goal was just to show you how to start using this. Okay. Now you can, if you want, go and make this look however you want to. Remember as well that we didn't do this work here on the About page. We made a separate component called about abc.js. And that means you can grab this and write, this file is not too long. It's just taking care of this single call to metadata, but you can put this in different spots. If you want to repeat this component on different pages of the ABCD site, you can do that now. If you want to make different type styles, you can do that too, because obviously this doesn't look great yet, right? It's just a proof of concept here. And you can take any of this and change it to look like you want it to look. Questions about that? Also, one more thing I'm going to do here to finish up. Maybe we want to provide a link to the transaction that's holding this data.
Hello,
Right?
Mr. James.
Go ahead, Faye.
Please, I'm kind of lost, but let me just ask. The GraphQL database, is it connected to the ABCD website? Like, because I noticed you're calling the Dandelion endpoint in the GraphQL, and you're not accessing the API endpoints generated in the ABCD website to display the JSON file. Like, how is it connected? I want to know how you connected the GraphQL and the ABCD.
Very good. Very good. This is the connection point. This is kind of where we open the door and we say, okay, the ABCD website is going to access information from somewhere else. And that's what we mean. At any time we talk about any API, we are talking about one program interacting with another program. Okay, so the ABCD website is its own thing. And in this one little section here, the information in this blue box is coming from an API. And this is why APIs are powerful, right? We can grab data from anywhere that makes an API. Go ahead, Faye.
Okay, then now, how did you set it up on the GraphQL?
Okay, this is what Dandelion does for us. Okay, so Roberto set this up. All right. And what he's doing is he basically has on a cloud provider, he has an instance of Cardano node running and synced up with the blockchain. He has an instance of Cardano DB sync running and synced up with the blockchain. And as a free community service, he makes those available to anybody via dandelion.link. Okay. Because it takes time to do this. If you could make your own DB sync instance, so you could talk to the blockchain yourself. But even when you know what you're doing, right? So there's technical things that somebody needs to learn. But even if you have the technical knowledge to do this, it still takes more than like 24 hours a lot of the time to sync up with DB sync. And like we've talked about, if all you have is a mobile connection and your data is limited, you're not going to want to spend, you know, it's like, I don't want to say the wrong number right now, but I'm pretty sure it's more than 5 gigabytes of data just to sync up in the first place. Okay. So you don't want to do that. This allows anybody to interact with the blockchain because he took care of it by doing this. One of the things we're working on is we want more people than just Roberto to be serving up these Dandelion endpoints, because the simple fact is, you know, obviously, like, I trust Roberto. He's one of the most honest people I've ever met, but still, no matter how honest somebody is, you should not trust them, right? This is, especially if we're talking about lots of money going around, right? Whoever's maintaining this, you need to trust them that they are honest when they say that they're serving up a copy of the blockchain. Okay, so that's a problem that we're working on right now, is we want a lot of people serving this up. But for now, because we're not doing things yet that have a lot of money, right? We're just playing and putting information up. And we know this is true because we can look at it, right? We're able to use this today. I know that was kind of a roundabout answer, but I wanted to kind of go a little deeper there. Now, last thing, this transaction oops. Okay, now I'm trying to get the oh, I know where I can go. Okay, in Discord, I have the addresses. Watch this. Okay, so here's the address that I used to send this transaction to Buki. So I should be able to look for that address on the Explorer. And then I should be able to look for the transaction that was sent. And then I can look at the metadata on that transaction, okay? So this is the official Cardano.org blockchain explorer. There's a lot of other sites that allow us to.
Hey, Mr. James.
Go ahead.
Okay, when you did this transaction, that was on Wednesday night that you were like, we should check on our wallet that we should see. So I quickly copied the address and I searched it on this Explorer, Cardano Explorer, to check if I would see this metadata information. I didn't see it. And I was saying I'm going to ask you the question that I asked you today. How come I didn't see the metadata keys and information on it? I only saw the receiver and the sender address, but I didn't see the metadata information. How come now it's showing?
Yeah, different. Well, it depends on what Explorer site you used. Some blockchain Explorer sites show metadata and others don't. So like this one, for example, and I just put the transaction ID in the chat, right? You can go straight to that transaction ID this way. And then I scroll down, it says warning, and it says, yeah, show me the unmoderated content. And that's just a warning from IOHK because that's their way of saying, look, we don't have any power to stop people from posting bad things here, right? So they're just saying, look, that's not us. This is actual data that anybody can post, and people can do all sorts of stuff with this, good, bad, and otherwise, right? Another site, there's another one called Cardano Scan, I think. Yeah, this one. I could search for the transaction here, and I could scroll down. This one, you can see the metadata down here, same information presented differently. Okay. So a bunch of different ways to look at it. Either way, what I'm thinking is, I think it's nice just to add a link. Okay, so I'm going to just take this link from the Blockchain Explorer, and I'm going to put it, I'm not going to put it in here because this is the dynamic data. I'm just going to say right here, let's make a paragraph. Let's make this oh no, I don't have to use link because I'm not doing an internal link. I could just use a href. Okay, so let's just say a href equals this. View this transaction, right? And you can go back, you can change the language here to wherever you want. I just want to show you, right? So basically, now, if I scroll down to the bottom of this page, underneath all the data, there's a link now that says view this transaction. That's going to take you directly to the transaction where you can see the original data. All right, but I'm going to leave it to you to change this if you want to make it say what you want. All right.
Okay.
So we covered a lot here. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop my server, push these changes up to the repo, and that should cause, whoa, sorry. This is dev course 2021-04. Let's push those changes. All right, so those changes are pushed up to Phase ABCD website repo. They should populate via Vercel. And I will post this video later today. My next few hours are a little busy, but as soon as I can, I'll post this video so you can take another look. Next week,
Okay.
let's start playing with this stuff, yeah?
Okay, thanks, Mr. James.
Thanks, everybody. That was fun. Looking forward to what we do
Awesome,
next.
James. Thank you very much.
Take
Awesome
care,
class.
Juan. Take care, Faye. Thanks, Juan. Take care, Buki.
Mr. James, please can I ask a question?
Of course.
Please, for now, can't we write our own metadata, or we are not yet have the instruments to do that?
You don't yet have all of the instruments in your hand, but I can post metadata for you, and I'd like to get you each week. I'd like to go a few steps closer to you being able to do this, and Dandelion is going to help with that too. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah.
What does he need? Does he need a good system, or is a power issue? Like,
Well, once we have Dandelion set up properly, all you need is a good internet connection. Yeah, you just need to be able to access the endpoints. But I do have to teach you how to build a transaction so that you can submit it. And for that, you need Cardano CLI. You don't need to sync the whole blockchain, but you do need the command line interface is a really good way. So let me see if we can learn that together next week. I can show you how to at least build those transactions, and then we'll talk about how to get them live up to the chain.
Okay, the word smart contract in Cardano, does it has to do with writing metadata when it comes to?
Very good. So they're separate things, although a smart contract can look at metadata and it can use it in its logic. But I'm 4 weeks into learning about Plutus smart contracts with the Plutus Pioneer program. So all of that is brand new to me, but I'd love to start showing you what I'm understanding so far. So we can also
Okay.
do that, okay?
No problem. Thank you so much.
Good things. All right. Have a good weekend, and I'll catch you
You
next
too.
week. Thanks, Faye.
Yeah.
See you soon. Bye.
See you soon.